For centuries, we've been on this epic quest for pure, objective truth. But what happens when that quest leads two brilliant people to completely opposite conclusions? What if the truth they find isn't a discovery at all, but a confession? Okay, let's try a little thought experiment to see what this really means. Picture a philosopher, right? A self-proclaimed seeker of truth, working away in some dimly lit study. They've been up all night, surrounded by these ancient books, and they are just exhausted and incredibly thirsty. So when they finally look up and see a simple glass of water, it's not just H2O to them. To this weary, thirsty soul, that water is everything. It's clarity, it's coolness, it's the very idea of a perfect, gentle flow. And from that feeling, they start to build this grand philosophical system where fluidity and transparency are the absolute highest virtues. Okay, now let's flip the script completely. Imagine a totally different kind of philosopher. This person isn't wary at all. They're a titan, a builder of empires, who has spent their entire life asserting their will on the world. And one day, they stand and look at a mountain. Now, do you think they see just rock and dirt? No way! For them, that mountain is strength. It is hierarchy. It's a symbol of eternal dominance. So naturally, the philosophy they build is all about solid foundations, about power, and about the right of the strong to lead. And this is where it gets really interesting, right? You can see the two laid out side by side. On one hand, a truth born from thirst, which values harmony and flow. On the other, a truth born from a will to power, which values strength and dominance. Both systems are logical, both are complex and well-argued. And here's the thing. Both of these philosophers are absolutely convinced they've discovered objective reality itself. But they can't both be right, can they? It really forces the question, who actually is right? Well, here's the twist. Maybe that's the wrong question to even ask. Because maybe what we're seeing isn't universal truth at all. It's the confession of a thirsty person and the echo of a conqueror's ambition. The truth they found wasn't out there in the world. It was inside them all along. It's like the quote says, a philosophical system is often just a confession of who they are, revealing their personal biases, desires, and psychological impulses. Okay, so if these big, grand truths are really just personal confessions in disguise, how on earth do they end up sounding like universal laws? Well, that brings us to the architecture of something called dogma. Dogma, simply put, is a set of beliefs that are just accepted, no questions asked. It's like the intellectual fortress a philosopher builds around their personal confession to protect it. So what are the bricks and mortar of that fortress? You'd think it's pure logic, right? Well, not so much. It turns out the foundations are often a lot shakier. Things like our own personal biases, old superstitions, and just societal traditions we never really question. And this is the real kicker. It turns out the conclusion, their personal worldview, it actually comes first. The whole complicated philosophical system, that's all built afterward, almost in reverse, to justify what they already wanted to believe. It's an elaborate defense for pre-existing belief. So to pull this whole thing off, to hide those shaky foundations, the philosopher needs a really good disguise. And that disguise, that mask, is what we call pure reason. Yeah, you can almost break it down into 4 steps. First, you start with something deeply personal, a bias, a desire, maybe even just being thirsty. Then you conceal it. You dress it up in all this fancy, complex, intellectual language. Step 3, you present that personal feeling as this grand, objective, universal truth. And finally, you defend it to the death, refusing to even consider any other point of view. So, you see, the very idea that we can get to the truth just by thinking really hard in a totally detached way, that's the illusion. That's the prejudice that needs to be broken down. Reason isn't discovering the truth. It's being used as a tool to hide the very human feelings at the heart of the argument. Okay, so if pure reason is a bit of a mirage and objective truth is really confession, what's left? Where does that leave us? Well, it leaves us in a world of perspectives. And this is where things really shift. What if this filter, this human lens, isn't a problem? What if it's the whole point? This idea suggests that all of our understanding is filtered through who we are, our desires, our biases, and this fundamental drive, what some call a will to power. It's this deep, primal instinct to shape the world according to our own values. I think this is a fantastic way to think about it. The old way of thinking was that the mind is like a mirror, It just passively reflects the truth that's already out there. But this new view says, no, the mind is more like a sculptor. It's actively shaping reality, carving meaning into it based on its own values and drives. And that, of course, brings this whole thing right back home to you. Because if every truth is a kind of confession, if every powerful belief reflects the person who holds it, then what is your strongest belief really confessing about you?